Welcome to the Ride and Inspire Rockcast, where we make sense of your brain, your bike, and why adult learning sometimes feels like magic, and sometimes it honestly feels like chaos. Let's make it easier together. Today, I would like to talk about one of my favorite topics ever, how mountain biking builds trust. And not just some kind of superficial trust, but real, deep self-trust and confidence. The kind of confidence that really spills over into every part of your life. Because the truth is, if you know how, mountain biking can literally rewire your brain for confidence and for inner peace and more joy on and off the bike, then it's a life-changing experience. Or, and that's what many people do, mountain biking can also cause you to lose confidence in yourself and in the bike. And then that is often amplified by crashing too often, and then, of course, physical and mental pain. And today, that's why I want to share how you can use mountain bike skills training to build confidence and to build that self-trust, the deep self-trust. And all of this, of course, as always, based on neuroscience and my daily experience coaching adult riders. Before we dive in, I'd like to add a quick note. This podcast is not sponsored. I've always kept it ad-free on purpose so I can share the things that genuinely help you and the topics that I know, well, basically based on my daily coaching experience, that people really need versus the things the algorithm pushes or the things that people think they need. And so that I can share without filters and without obligations. It does, however, take time and money to create these episodes, and it's only possible because of the amazing humans who support me on Patreon or buy me the occasional coffee. So if you're one of them, thank you so much. You are the reason this podcast exists. And if you'd like to join them, then check the show notes below or go to patreon.com/rideandinspire, or you can start working with my remote coaching on roxybike-coaching.com. And this way, we will both grow and will both flourish even more. So let's dive in. Maybe you've had a moment on the trail where your brain screams, "Oh my God, we are going to die." Or a moment like where your bike is like, "Okay, relax. I'm literally designed for this. I'm made for it." Okay, both of them are over dramatized, but somewhere between those two voices, there's a sweet little space where real confidence is actually born. So today, I want to show you how mountain biking becomes a confidence machine based on neuroscience, based on movement science, and real stories from riders like Samantha, who went from doubting almost everything she did or felt to becoming one of the most grounded and self-assured riders I have ever coached in my life. So let's get right into it. Here's the very first big myth that I have to destroy. Confidence is not a personality trait. It's not like you're born with it. It's actually a trained neural pattern. Your brain creates confidence the same way it creates any skill in life, through repetitions and through collecting proof. So every time you do something that feels challenging and it ends safely, that's when your brain strengthens the connection between this action creates safety and that creates success. And that's literally visible in brain scans. And those circuits, they become faster and smoother thanks to something called myelination, which is a fatty insulation around neural pathways, and that makes the signals travel faster and more reliably. And every time you repeat that, so every time you repeat something that causes you to see, okay, this action creates safety and that creates success, there's more of that myelin wrapped around those pathways. So it becomes wired in deeply and it just becomes automatic. And mountain biking is perfect for this because it gives your brain tons of small, rapid fire opportunities to learn. Like, for example, you slip on a trail and then you save it, or you finally clear a route that you've been dreading for so long, or you got a super nice front wheel lift today, or maybe you cleared a corner that you had never cleared before. And each one of those is a success rep. So your brain goes, okay, well, maybe we can trust ourselves a little bit more. What matters in all of this is that confidence is built through repetition and it's not pure luck. And every time a rep becomes more reliable and the thing you expect actually comes true, you gain more confidence. And that's why I got into mountain bike coaching, to be honest, because in my opinion, it's a tool for all sorts of transformation in your life. It, like through mountain biking, it just makes it more attainable and fun. So now let's look at the foundation of self-confidence. I actually love the German word for confidence. It's Selbstbewusstsein. And Selbstbewusstsein means confidence in German, but the word is actually made up of two words, and that is Selbst and Bewusstsein. Selbst means self, and Bewusstsein means awareness. So confidence in German actually means being aware of yourself. True confidence actually begins with awareness. So it's not blind hype. You must be aware of what you're good at, and you must be aware of where you can still grow, and you must be aware of what's safe at the moment. And you must be aware of your limits in a healthy way, because the last thing you want when you're building confidence is a crash, because you overestimate yourself, because that will probably ruin all the confidence you built before. And that's why it's really important that you're aware of your limits. And mountain biking, it forces you to check in with yourself honestly, because you may ask yourself, like, what am I actually scared of? Where do I stiffen up? What parts of the trail feel fine? Which ones freak me out? What patterns do I repeat when I'm nervous? And that is a possibility to become aware of your patterns. Awareness is actually the entry portal to confidence, because you need to become aware of what's holding you back first in order to change it. And this is actually where I just remembered one of my favorite books. It has changed the way I look at life and also the way I coach. It's called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. And one of the core ideas in that book is that awareness precedes transformation, because you cannot change what you're not aware of. And once we say that, it kind of sounds obvious, but when you feel it, it kind of feels uncomfortable, because the moment you become aware of your mistakes, that's also the moment our ego gets poked. And for example, you think you were braking just fine, and then you work with my personal feedback, and in the feedback, you notice, okay, wow, I've been committing this error for 20 years and I wasn't even aware of it. And that gap between how we see ourselves and what is actually happening, that's actually where growth starts, but that's also where it hurts a little. So in the book, Millman has a sequence, and the 4 steps in the sequence is notice, accept, adjust, and repeat. So first, you need to notice. You need to notice what you're doing wrong. This is just data. And it's important that you do this without belittling yourself or blaming. I'm going to come to this later, because that's what matters for true growth. You need the data first. Second is accept. So not label, not like I'm bad at this, I suck at this. It's, okay, what is happening right now? Accept what is. Because acceptance removes that emotional noise. And often we link our mistakes to our identity, but we must turn that data into pure information. We just need to accept what is. Then comes number 3, and that is adjust. So one small tweak or one cue, because multitasking really is a myth. So it's about concentrating on one thing, the causal mistake, and not some consequential mistake, to be able to correct it. And this is where pro feedback really comes into play, because often when I'm training people, they will try to correct a consequential mistakes. And while doing that, they are ingraining the causal mistake, the thing that's actually the root of everything, by practicing, because they don't even know. They don't even notice it. And then comes step 4, which is repeat. So if you have enough rest in between and then repeat again and again, that is precisely how transformation happens. There's actually no magic to this. You just need to repeat the right patterns over and over, have enough rest in between. You don't need to blindly push harder, and you don't need to be perfect. You need to accept, adjust, and repeat. And that is, through conscious repetition, how transformation in any area of life actually happens. And it's also the leverage for building Selbstbewusstsein, so self-awareness, real confidence. Because every time you run that loop, notice, accept, adjust, and repeat, you're actually proving to yourself, okay, I can observe myself honestly. I can tolerate seeing my limits, and I can improve. And that builds something much deeper than just pep talking yourself. Because it builds self-trust. Because self-trust is the backbone of confidence. Confidence isn't I never make mistakes. It is I can handle a mistake and I can correct mistakes. And mountain biking is just such a powerful tool for this. And personal mountain bike coaching is because it gives you that feedback and thus the opportunities for this loop over and over and over again. You start to see cause and effect. And that is precisely why I always explain the why in my videos and in my remote coaching. Because if you see the cause and the effect, your brain loves that. It loves cause and effect. So for example, oh, okay, that felt sketchy because I straightened my arms. And that's how your brain builds a deep self-feedback loop and that awareness, which, as I said, is actually in the word Selbstbewusstsein, so self-awareness, and the foundation for confidence. So next I want to talk about dopamine just a little bit. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and basically you can think of it as the brain's, okay, let's do that again, chemical. Because your brain doesn't need the huge big wins to change. It needs clear wins where it knows why it worked, and it needs those often enough. So every tiny piece of visible progress in your brain triggers dopamine. The size isn't that important. The frequency of this evidence matters more. And that's why in all my remote courses, I have micro lessons that you can check off one after the other with attainable goals. Because by understanding cause and effect, noticing your progress, that's how you're feeding your brain a steady drip of proof, drip of dopamine. And these dopamine kicks, you can imagine them like glue. They are gluing in the process. They're actually gluing those connections together. So an effective, brain-friendly coaching system is always built around that, about structured drills, about understanding cause and effect, about relatable feedback, and about that dopamine release, and then repeating that with enough sleep in between. Because your brain learns through repetition and recognition. And that's how confidence grows, because progress is measurable. So here's something many riders do that basically puts up a big stop sign for your brain: the inner dialogue. And no, inner dialogue is not mindset fluff. Every dialogue is literally neuron training. So if you think you're motivating yourself by being strict on yourself or talking to yourself negatively, well, actually, neuroscience shows the opposite, because negative self-talk creates a self-fulfilling cycle of anxiety and a cycle of low self-esteem and stress, because it hinders performance and personal growth. Because harsh self-criticism actually activates the same brain regions associated with physical pain, such as the anterior cingulate cortex and the insula. It triggers the brain's stress response. It activates the amygdala. It increases cortisol. And this again impairs cognitive function. It impairs memory. It impairs emotional regulation. So your brain actually treats self-criticism as a real threat, and thus strengthens negative neural pathways via neuroplasticity. And chronic negativity can also reduce prefrontal cortex activity, and that can cause impulsivity and decrease cognitive control. And the fact is, it distorts reality. You start to foster feelings of unworthiness. It can even cause burnout. It can cause helplessness, and it really does not motivate you. It actually damages mental well-being, and it can lead to serious physical and mental health consequences, because high cortisol levels from chronic negative self-defeating thoughts can really impair working memory and thus contribute to mental health disorders like anxiety and depression. So it's really a relentless saboteur, and it undermines your confidence. It creates barriers to mental well-being. Although some people think, oh, I'm just trying to motivate myself by being strict on myself. But it's really not helping. This is what neuroscience shows. Because neuroplasticity wires in whatever you repeat often enough. And what's the antidote? Well, it's practicing positive, compassionate, and objective self-talk, because that can physically rewire the brain for better mental health. So if you're trying to tell yourself, oh my God, you're so clumsy, or if you talk to yourself like, you should be able to do this by now, or basically if you're saying anything that you wouldn't say to a dear friend, then This primes your amygdala, your fear center, tension rises, vision narrows, muscle stiffens, and you know the rest. However, if you shift your self-talk to, okay, I'll try this and I'll learn from it, or hey, Roxy, take it slow today, you've had a hard day. So every time you're being kind and compassionate towards yourself, you're not only activating the prefrontal cortex, so the learning network, but also you are releasing the neurochemicals that make you feel safe, seen, and good. And those repeated thoughts, the repeated neural activity of compassion and kindness, they will get stronger over time and they will actually allow for learning. So if you keep saying, okay, I'm not good at switchbacks, then those neurons will get better at believing that. You'll keep looking for proof because your brain always wants to be right, and its belief shapes its perception. And if you change that to, I'm learning switchbacks, or even if you just add a single word, like, I'm not good at switchbacks yet, that's when your neurons prepare for improvement. And the thought becomes the cue. And on a bike, cues with time become body language, because body language is a confidence amplifier. This is actually one of my favorite little ideas. Confidence isn't just a thought, it's actually a physiological state. Your body and brain, they are in constant communication with each other, and they can either make each other spiral positively or negatively. A positive thought will release neurochemicals that make your body relax. Your body relaxes, so your brain feels safe and relaxes more. This sends out more positive neurotransmitters, and it's a positive self-feeding loop. Or you tense your body, your brain thinks you're unsafe. This triggers fear chemicals, the body tenses more, and so on. And if you know this, you can leverage the body as a confidence amplifier. So during practice, for example, you could bring awareness to any tenseness you have in the body and release it. And then notice how you've done that and give yourself kudos. Because remember, small wins, dopamine, your brain relaxes more, and it's a self-feeding positive loop. That tells the entire system we're safe. So in that moment, your whole body shifts. Heart rate stabilizes, vision widens, muscles soften, and of course also your fine motor control improves. And this is literally the opposite of fear. And posture can matter in this too. Because, for example, if you have a collapsed posture, this will tell your brain, okay, we are overwhelmed. A tall, balanced, aesthetic stance can send the signals to your brain saying, okay, we're capable. Even faking confident postures while practicing can help because it sends that bottom-up information back to your brain, and that shifts your emotional state. And if you then create a safe learning zone, focus on the small wins, this all becomes a self-feeding positive loops. So here's another truth people forget. Your brain isn't actually scared of difficulty. It's scared of anything that is unfamiliar. You can think of it like an immune system. Your brain has an immune system, and everything that's unfamiliar is attacked at first. However, every time you repeat a skill and it ends safely, your brain actually stamps that neural pathway with, okay, this is safe, this is repeatable, and that's how it becomes familiar. And that's why people keep saying growth happens outside of the comfort zone, because you need to do unfamiliar things first in order to make them familiar with safe, repeated patterns. And that's why it's so important to practice in a safe zone, like on easy trails and parking lots with a focus on the clean execution, so on the technique, because you're building familiarity in a zero pressure environment. And if you'd like to follow my practice catalog for that, then check the link in the show notes. And then when you're on a real trail, the nervous system already has those patterns and it recognizes the situation and said, okay, we've done this before. I have enough proof to believe, and that's how confidence is built. So confidence isn't about being fearless. It's about having enough proof, understanding cause and effect, and then building empowering beliefs to see the world through the filter of, okay, I know I can do this. This will give you even more proof over time. So here are a few final thoughts. Real confidence requires kindness, not perfection. A mistake is just a repetition, and it's essential feedback. The most successful people are those who have committed the most mistakes with the awareness to recognize what they need to change. So when you say, okay, that was a great lesson, You activate your brain emotional regulation system, not its fear system. You return to the baseline faster, you stay curious longer, you learn better. If you tell yourself, oh, I screwed up again, or if you avoid mistakes altogether, that puts your brain straight into threat mode. And if you expect mistakes by saying things like, oh, what if I fail? What if I mess up? Your brain releases and activates the threat circuits. No, your brain releases the stress hormones and it activates the threat circuits where learning is not possible because your brain cannot protect and learn at the same time. And that's why also your environment matters a lot, because confidence grows in the right ecosystem. Surround yourself with people who celebrate progress, not perfection. Not just people who focus on results, but who join you on in the process. So maybe not people who keep asking, did you clear it? But people who support you in the learning process. Most of all, practice in an environment where mistakes are safe. That means easy trails, isolated obstacles, and all of that without self-sabotaging yourself by being overly strict, because it's not helping, it's slowing you down. This is exactly why Samantha, the writer I mentioned right at the beginning of this episode, changed so dramatically. When she joined my coaching, she doubted everything she did. She apologized constantly. Her boyfriend kept telling her she needed to write faster to overcome her fear, and she just needed to keep writing the trail that scared her to improve. She then assumed she was the one who was just too slow, or the scared one, and the problem child. And it's not true, because of course, every time she went out and saw that she has all the right to be scared because it is scary, she kept reinforcing that negative pattern. Once she started, however, practicing with my remote coaching courses and the structure, my personal encouragement, the clear feedback showing her why she reacted the way and showing her she reached those micro goals every single session, and she started working with small attainable drills that made success visible and a community that celebrated every tiny step, that's how she transformed, like over 100, no, actually can't be over because then she'd be back. She transformed 180 degrees. She learned she can do things. She learned she can trust her body. She can trust her gut feeling. She learned to believe in her own progress. She learned to focus on her success. And she learned that confidence isn't magic. It's actually built by data, built by the right habits. And this is how this all transferred to life. She now has a new job she never thought she was capable of, because she started to build her very own chain of proof. And that changed the way she reacted to criticism. It changed the rate with which she learned and her entire being, and also her happiness. Because everything you learn on a bike can transfer to life if you see cause and effect and if you create successful habits along the way. And that's exactly how mountain biking can be used as a tool to build confidence, to build self-trust, and to build that deep self-awareness. So next time you practice skills, remember, you're training your brain's belief in you. And that's one neural pathway at a time, one small win at a time. If this episode helped you, share it with another writer or work with me. All the links are below. Thank you for staying till the end.